Hi Jamie, hi Safa. Thank you for talking to me today. To start, can you just tell me a bit about yourself and your role?
Sure. So I'm Safa. I'm a finalist at Exeter doing my history undergrad, and I co-chaired one of the race seminars, the last one that we had actually with Jamie.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm a third year student as well, studying Exeter College, and I am the JCR's BME rep for this year.
What did you guys find most interesting or inspiring about the conferences?
In terms of the first one, what I found really interesting was kind of the specificity and kind of like the, not even nicheness, but the kind of detail that the tutors were going into about different things. So one of our professors, Nandini, was kind of talking about, how words are constructed to keep some people, in an in group and some people in an out group, and how this became really important in literature, especially, when people started to properly travel between countries and kind of experience people from different cultures and backgrounds. And, all the other, people who spoke, Dex now, Jane, and the archivist whose name I've forgotten right now, but they all say really interesting things that you just don't really hear about when you have like a racial dialogue.
I think maybe for me, just like, I don't know how like prevalent and fraught and tense race relations actually are. Like everyone had something to contribute. Like students of color, tutors of color. It's something that is on everyone's mind, and sometimes that is always something you have to kind of constantly grapple with. And I know just kind of being able to relate to everyone so much, and knowing that it wasn't just an issue for me. It's something that's constantly on all of our minds, and something that's not going away anytime soon, something that's just really in the forefront for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. It was really interesting in
Yeah.
the second one we had. It was kind of like me and you would both say things, and then the other one of us would nod and be like, "Yeah, of course, this makes a lot
It's
of
kind of
sense."
like
And then some of the professors of colour were kind of like nodding too, going like,
yeah.
either they clearly heard about it or something that had happened to them, like specifically. So it's kind of really good to have a discussion and realise, A, you're not in it by yourself, and B, these things are much more common than people think, and talking about them actually would reveal that, it's not just you.
Yeah, I feel like that's half the battle, just realising that like it's not a you problem, it's everyone.
So what's something interesting that you took away from the conference? So it could be like an important message or something that you didn't know before.
I think for the last one, so we basically watched a film by some like British Somali women who go to Cambridge. And one thing that really struck me was kind of like them grappling with a lot of issues around intersectionality. They were talking about how they're black, about how they're black women, about how they're black Muslim women from a country that has like a specific kind of relation to this country. I don't know, kind of seeing that layering in real time and kind of realizing what that means for me and for other people, and like kind of relating to that. I think that was something really interesting. And also they talked a lot about, they kind of made me realize something about myself. They kind of spoke about how their place at Cambridge, at like this kind of elitist, prestigious institution, they really spoke about it in terms that were outside of themselves. Like their place here meant a lot for their parents, their extended family, their community in general. And like it wasn't until I watched that I realized that I actually have been carrying that pressure with me of feeling like, and I feel a lot of people from non-traditional backgrounds will feel this, but like if you kind of made it against the odds, you feel like you're here for everyone, and you have to not waste it. You have to get something out of it. You have to prove something.
And another thing, kind of not on similar lines, but kind of talking about how, a lot of things that might be seen as normal in everyday lives kind of become highly visible to other people when you move to institutions such as Oxford or Cambridge. It's kind of like, speaking a certain sort of way or having a certain sort of food. You didn't bat an eyelid, at least I didn't really bat an eyelid when I was in London, but doing the same sort of thing here kind of gets you noticed. And they kind of articulated that thought very well. It's kind of like your culture comes out more, and it seems or it's perceived to be expressed more in places where there's less of it, and it's just a really interesting thing. In terms of, I guess, the first talk, I did find it really interesting. Professor Dex now, he kind of talked a bit about like race relations in the revolutionary era in Jamaica, I think, or the Caribbean islands, one of the two. He talked about some of the collective action that was taking place then, and it was really good to hear about kind of like, obviously the collective action didn't go that successfully, to kind of hear that, there were movements that weren't just for liberation, that weren't just the ones we all learn about in school.
Why do you think people could benefit from attending these conferences? So I know that you guys mentioned dialogues, like you had a thought that kind of applied to other people, and like if you said something, other people were nodding, stuff like that. So do you think, like, what other things do you think people could get out of going to the conferences?
Yeah, I think one aspect is definitely like relatability. Like the film was kind of talking about these Somali women, and that's, you know, not something that I would immediately necessarily know about or relate to, or you know, something that you might even make the mistake of thinking like, oh well, we're all people of color, we all have the same struggles. I think anything that just like broadens your horizons and makes you think about experiences different from your own is like always going to be valuable.
Yeah, just adding on to that, what's really interesting is I also think it being unrelatable or for a lot of people in itself is also kind of more of a reason to go, because at that point you're being exposed to views you've never seen before and kind of understanding things from a massively different perspective in a way that might seem not alienating, but, you know, very different and might throw you through a bit of a loop. I think whether you can relate to it through a cultural way or you can kind of actually not relate to it, I think that there's something to kind of come and see.
What's planned for the future? Are there more conferences on the agenda?
So we're planning to have some more in Hillary and hopefully Trinity. I think we're going to try and keep it to roughly 2 a term. And if we can keep this momentum going, maybe it will even extend past this year. As you said, because of the complications of like COVID and stuff, like it's going to be quite difficult to have, I guess, like in-person events. So it's kind of hard to kind of foster community. But there's kind of like a broader set of things that will hopefully be going on in Hillary term and Trinity term beyond just like seminars to do with BME things, whether it be, you know, better like some casual Q&As with potential students for next year or people considering applying, or just like, you know, maybe some more casual talks and discussions. Hopefully those sorts of things will be happening.
Great. And more generally, what are your thoughts on Exeter College's commitment to diversity?
I'm kind of more happy with them now. The Black Lives Matter working group, I came in quite cynical. I was very much of the mind of a lot of the stuff they're going to just do for PR, or not really going to do stuff at all, or because the higher up bodies aren't necessarily as representative as they could be. You know, what I might see as a major concern might be seen as a minor concern to them. But they were pretty much receptive to almost everything we had to say, you know, when we formalised it and put it in proposals. But, you know, the college is doing more than I expected. I mean, we've still got a long way to go, I guess. But, you know, them being proactive and being receptive is a very good place to start.
I think that's a really nice point you made about like, yeah, you can have these statistics about outreach, about admissions, but like, you know, what are you doing for these people once they're here? And like that actually reminds me a lot about what we spoke about in the last seminar, and when we watched this film about these women at Cambridge, and how we were talking about how, you know, at spaces like this, there's actually like a physical tension that you kind of hold the whole time you're here, and like that the kind of disconnect the women felt from like their home, whether it was Somalia or London, and just kind of like when they have that scene where they're back in like a set that's made to look like a Somalian drawing room, they have the actual physical release. And so yeah, I think it's really important for like colleges to recontextualize how they view access, and you know, it's not just about getting people here, it's like how are you supporting them once they are. It's sort of like, rather than changing the space, just empowering people to know that they can belong in any space and they're allowed to be there.